Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Polities Podcast. I'm Alex Dinley here with Dr. Andrew Jones.
Hello.
It is time for Catholic social teaching.
Indeed.
It's 2025. We need it. We have a new pope, and our time is one with many turmoils, new developments, still long-lasting social injustices. I mean, numerous wars, conflicts. Mm-hmm. It seems like the time after COVID became even more tumultuous and turbulent. And I think it's very important for our time that Catholics, especially in this time on the political right and the new political ideas that are out there, that Catholics firmly source their own ideas about the political order from Catholic social doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. 100%. Yeah, it's time. It's time for us to stop piggybacking on the ideologies, the secular ideologies of the 19th century, and trying to correct them here or correct them there, add a little moralizing gloss there, a little policy recommendation there. That's over. That period is over. The West is in crisis, obviously. The United States is in crisis. It's like you said, it's profoundly unsettled, and there are multiple players, multiple bids being made for like the resetting of the social, what am I going to say? Like the social consciousness, the sort of social zeitgeist or whatever it is.
Totally.
The paradigm by which we view the world. And it is in no way obvious that Christianity is going to have, it will have much of a role to play in that unless Christians reassert it and do so in a convincing way.
Because the movement has been into a kind of post-ideology age. Like the reason you can have all these different theories come about is because we've started to become cynical about the ideas that have informed the political order in a certain way. And so our condition has been so enmeshed in the thing that we can't think outside of it. There's a kind of malaise, an inevitability about the social order, basically giving up of we can have social justice in the world. Like that's the situation that Christians now.
There's almost you can feel almost a fatalism with a lot of people, or like you said, like a giving up, an apathy. And then, but the thing is that kind of apathy / fatalism is then a space that opens up for really malicious action. Right, like for cynical, malicious action, and that's the thing. So I think that there's a real fight for the soul of the West, obviously, and of in the United States, which is what we're primarily concerned with as Americans, about whether or not Christianity is to be rejected along with the liberal order, that the ideological liberal socialist whatever order, and whether or not Christianity is just part of that to be rejected with it and be replaced with we'll see what, or whether or not Christianity is actually the solution to these problems, right? And I think that's a fight for the very soul of in my immediate context for the more of the right political right, just because that's where I sort of live. But I think it's the case across the board.
Yes, right. Yeah, and that was part of our fight with the Nietzscheans in the previous podcast series we did on politics of paganism, and partly there is because we have a conservatism that no longer has any need for Christianity.
Yeah, it's a critique of modernity that is not based on Christianity. Now, this is somewhat novel, right? I mean, you had critiques within modernity fighting over modernity. The socialists, the liberals, the nationalists, whatever, who are fighting each other within modernity. But a critique of the whole evolution of the West in the modern world, like a devastating critique of it that doesn't fall back on the pre-modern West, on Christianity, that in fact believes that Christianity is an aspect of that corruption or of that that demise, that decadence. This is something that at least in the United States, I mean, I think the Europeans witnessed this in the 20th century, but in the United States is somewhat novel and seductive, right? And so that's a part, but that's just on that kind of on the political right. I think the reason, one of the reasons why that has occurred, or why that's viable, that rejection of Christianity, is that social teaching, the church's social teaching, has been, for even though the papacy, even though the magisterium has asserted repeatedly a rather thick set of principles and approaches that allow us to make sense of the world and to view something to go forward, some path forward. Even though that is the case, the way it's actually been received largely has been as a superficial kind of moralizing gloss, like a moralizing, on moral issues, the church says this or that, or but with a sort of vague acceptance of the modern world's conception of reality itself, the modern world's conception of what the political world is, of what the human being is, of what the ends of human society are, of human life are. So there's been in the United States, it's largely liberal assumptions, or liberal playing field on which Catholic social teaching has been sort of incoherently applied here or there as convenient, right? And that has presented a image of what the church has to say, of weakness, of incoherence, of intellectual shallowness, right? And but that's an illusion. I mean, I think that's a product of the particular post-war situation in the United States, the way in which, and in Western Europe, but the way in which the Christians have for a long time, where their primary agenda seemed to be to become as normal as possible, right? And therefore to reduce any aspect of Christianity that is opposed to the structure of modernity. And that has made it appear really dismissible, but the time we're in right now is a time in when all those liberal taboos, the liberal dogmas that you weren't allowed to question, are being swept away. I mean, it is no longer the case, for example, that, I mean, just obvious things like freedom. It is no longer the case that you can just assume that the desire for an increase in freedom and for the maintenance of freedom is a universal value, right? In the political discourse, right. In fact, what's occurred is that for most of the serious action, it seems to me, most of this serious intellectual action is going on because freedom, the rhetoric of freedom, was associated directly with the rhetoric of post-war liberalism, that the rejection of post-war liberalism has resulted in also the rejection of the notion of freedom itself. Liberals are always talking about freedom, therefore, and liberals are wrong, and look what liberalism has produced. Therefore, freedom itself we don't have to pay attention to. Right. Therefore, it's just rhetoric. Right. Justice, the same sort of way. Right.
Yes.
Justice is just a rhetorical trick of certain liberal agendas, and therefore it has no real significance, and we dismiss it, right, and move on. And then when we end up with is talking just about power, and the use of power, and there, and even there, it's like, well, to what end is power applied to? I mean, my point is that there's a lot of the concepts that underwrite Catholic social teaching have been wrapped up in liberal discourse, and therefore the rejection of liberal discourse is throwing Christianity out with it.
Right. There was at the same time a kind of neglect of the radical liberal critique that was going on in the encyclicals, like not realizing how deep how the social order should be, and the errors and the problems of liberalism, and then eventually, as Paul VI talks about, technocracy, and a deep economic critique, a deep political critique. And then, of course, the social, the marital critiques are there. However, we're still stuck in the liberal regimes, and so there's how do Christians act in this, right? And so the neglect of the deep critique there, and then a taking of the how do you act in the world, granted this is your world, granted your world is consumerist, granted your world is a liberal political order. How do Christians still manage to participate, do the good, try to live justice? And once we've had this big wave of we're done with liberalism and we're going to throw away everything, it's like, oh, well, let's just throw away Catholic social teaching and Christianity altogether as well, right? We'll lumped all together, get out of here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's largely the church's fault, right? I mean, like we needed to maintain a more radical posture all along, but here we are, right? But it's not we're so far gone from the Christian worldview, the Christian starting premises. We're so far gone in the popular mind that we really need to start at the beginning, right? It's no longer policy recommendations or so for example, you used to be able to say, the church used to be able to say something like, abortion is wrong, and then say something about human dignity, right? And the assumption being that everyone believed in human dignity, right? And that's piggybacking on certain liberal assumptions. That's not true anymore, right? Like, it's no longer the case that works. So now you have to say, if you're going to argue against abortion, it's no longer a moral claim that's appealing to morals that are already held by the population as a whole. We have to now go back to it like an anthropological argument. Who is the human person? What are human beings? What is the world? Why are we here? What is the end that to which we are ordered or ought to be ordered? And then why is it then the case that we can see how is it that abortion is operating in opposition to those ends? Right, like it's all the way back to the beginning, and then when you have those beginning places, then we can begin to see, hopefully, that the church's policy positions that is expounded over the decades are not a incoherent kind of hodgepodge feel-goody thing, but are actually highly consistent and are flowing out of a cosmology and an anthropology that the world as a whole has forgotten.
Yes.
Right? But that we have to remember that. And that will allow us to do things like dismiss, agree with the radicals on the right about dismissing a lot of the liberal or socialist conceptions of freedom, justice, equality, those sorts of things, while not, but all in asserting the truth of freedom, justice, and equality. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Rather than the rejection of the concepts outright, and therefore the paving the way for tyranny.
Right.
Right.
And it's almost another returning to the roots. Like, we have to get to the roots of the doctrine in order to then have it really appear for our time in a certain way. Like, we have to go back to power, authority, hierarchy. Yeah. Common good.
Ends. What are things for? What are they? Power is an incredibly important one, right? Power. I think power and authority. If you look at the 19th century church, it talked about power and authority quite a bit. Then you start dodging it, right? We start dodging it in the 20th century, and you get these really weird phenomenon of certain sectors within the church talking about the way things ought to be without then talking about the power that makes things so. Right? As if the government should do this, the government should do that. We should have this social service and that social service, but then just sort of ignoring the fact that the government is power. right? And like what kind of power, and how does that power work, and when is it justified to wield power? When is it not? Is all power based on violence, or are there other forms of power? Is power, is power always efficacious in the same ways, or is it not? Is different forms of power compatible with different human ends, and therefore some forms of power ought to be developed and used, and other forms of power ought to be rejected? I mean, all those sorts of questions are just fundamental to the whole concept of Catholic social teaching. I mean, you think about what Catholic social teaching is it is a theology and philosophy of helping make clear to the laity who are wielding power what they ought to wield power for, right? Like that's what it's about. So otherwise, it's just nonsense, right? So power. Well, that puts us right in the center of what's going on in political thought outside of Christianity. So, if you look at the postmodern kind of vaguely, I guess it's left. I don't know if it's really left anymore, but it's sort of left. It's all about power. You look at the right, it's all about power, right? So the rejection of values, the rejection of ideals has resulted in all that the last thing standing is the reality of power. Great. Let's start there.
Right. We have a lot to say on that.
Let's talk about power.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hierarchy. Oh, equality is dumb? No kidding. I mean, the idea that human beings are all the same is about the stupidest idea the modern world ever came up with. Right? Okay, so that means that there's always hierarchy. There's degrees of power. There's ways power's ordered. There are relations of dependency and hegemony.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
Well, and that also directly addresses something you brought up of one of the concerns of our time, which is identity, right?
Absolutely right, yeah.
Because those things speak into that problem. When you assert a kind of just blithe equality and you get lost in the mass and you're just an isolated individual, you have this interior crisis of identity, and you want to be part of a whole, be part of a common good. Have a place in it that you can know and be a part of,
and act with efficacy. So have power, right?
Right. Yeah. Not just be subject to the power of another,
right? But
to actually, of course, that's the claim of subsidiarity, to be liberated, to have authority as well. But Catholic social teaching directly provides a way to be in the political order, like a way to have an identity. But we have such a crisis of it. Part of what we were, the earlier part of this year, and then our conference was addressed to that question of the people, and what does it mean to be a people, be a nation, have identity within that,
which is just, I mean, probably in a more narrowly political sense, like the most pressing question of our moment is the question of identity and therefore of immigration. On the immigration, and then also identity, say racial identity, sexual identity, whatever identity as a whole, both on the left and on the right. Identity politics, we call it. Right?
Yeah.
And there's different versions of it on the left and the right. And that is an incredibly important, obviously, question that is very subtle and complicated, and I'm afraid to say again that Catholic social teaching, as popularly received, has dodged it, mostly with platitudes, with sort of simplistic platitudes about justice and kindness and this, and without any real serious dealing with the actual issues at hand, right? That if the dissolving of community, the dissolving of place, the dissolving of culture into the technocratic mass, if that is wrong, if that is bad, if that's not compatible with human flourishing, then then rooting human beings in time, in place, in culture, in history, this becomes the opposite, the thing that has to be done. So then the question is, well, how do we root? What does that mean? What does that look like? I mean, you go down that road without being careful, and without really thinking about it. And you can say, well, if the liberals were wrong, the globalists and the global capitalist order is wrong about dissolving all of our identities and our cultures and all of this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, all of a sudden you're a Nazi. Right? No, I mean, if you don't actually, like, that's what other people have said those things, right?
Right.
And they weren't necessarily wrong in their critique of global liberalism on that score, right? But to say, well, because global liberalism, look, I've demonstrated that it's wrong, therefore the guys who've been calling it wrong are right. It's like, no, that does not follow, actually, right? Like, that doesn't follow.
Right.
And so the imperative of the church is to make available an alternative to that. It's like, yes, you're right. You're right that the atomization and the rootlessness of modernity is a tragedy and is abhorrent to human nature. But the solution to that is found in a sense of identity that is rooted in justice, solidarity, and freedom. Right. And here's how that works. Here's what that looks like. A positive teaching.
Right. I mean, John Paul II, the solidarity in Poland against communism, against another universalizing ideological move, and even thinking, Rocco Buttiglione was here at our conference, and his understanding of what it means really for peoples to dialogue with one another. What that actually means is that they have to have some type of cultural identity. They have to have something. You
Absolutely.
said between a culture of nothing and a culture of a people, there can be no dialogue, right? Like, you have to have a kind of stability and understanding of yourself and understanding of your people, your culture, your nation, your place, to be humble enough not to be a universalizing, our ideology is for all peoples of the earth, and we will, like, a kind of imperial mode. And then in the other, a kind of just destruction of culture and identity to the point that anyone can be here and we're just open to everything type of thing. Like, the church from the social doctrine is able to provide that as a
if it has the courage to do it. All right, and that means breaking old loyalties for a lot of people. Like, it is okay, you were against the United States, American imperialism, capitalist imperialism during the Cold War. And therefore, that kind of sucked you into being a fellow traveler with people on the left. All right, that happened. Right, but the Cold War's over. Right, it's no longer the case that opposition to the United States imperialism is the rejection of all identity, or the rejection of all. I don't know, that the people on the left who aren't even on the left anymore, who are just the neoliberal expansionists, right? That those are still your allies, is what I'm trying to say. It's no longer the case against the kind of hawkish American right. It's like, that's not the lay of the land anymore.
No.
So you've got to give up. People have to give up those old loyalties and reassess the whole situation, the whole lay of the land and the whole situation. In fact, that it's quite likely that people who nowadays are talking about the importance of culture, the importance of identity in a geographical sense, the importance of the history, this is no longer in opposition to this is no longer in opposition to what is called the political right, or used to be. It's now now primarily on the right. Right, and it's the so-called political left that's talking about the dissolving of all identity, right? And so that, you see, there was a switch, like a historical switch, that has happened since the end of the Cold War and the invention of the internet and the other things that happened in the 90s, that requires the church to readjust. Right.
And that I think that maybe I could, in a bigger, more theoretical level here, regarding the social doctrine, as the encyclical tradition shows, requires an application to the time and place of the people, right? And John Paul II, at the end of Centesimus Annus, when he's providing what is Catholic social teaching, because we've had this long tradition, but he calls for lay people and for institutes and the like to articulate the principles in the Catholic social teaching for their country, for their people, for their time. And so there is always a need to be re-articulating the doctrines in light of those changes that you're showing here. Like the political landscape has changed radically. The question of identity and ultimately the technological changes that Pope Leo XIV has pointed to, that AI could potentially be another industrial revolution, maybe even on a much grander scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, we need to, I mean, it's such an acceleration of the modern solvent, like the dissolving of humanity, right? Such an acceleration of it that unless we get our act together and start talking about what the human being is and what our ends are, what human flourishing is, we need to do it fast. I mean, is what I'm trying to say. Like people have to be given the resources to resist what's coming. And like moralizing little glosses about, well, just make sure you use it. It's just a tool, and make sure you use it right. And if you use it for good things or bad things, it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it anymore. We need to talk about what are the structural, historical dynamics of the technocracy that is being built. Why is it being built? What is it for? What are the moral implications of human beings complying with it, participating in it, right? What are the dangers that are in play? I mean, this is serious. It'd be very, very serious time, and like sort of reasonable, sober reflection on finding the middle path is not going to cut it.
No. Well, and it's the nature of technocracy and this kind of technological development to not know what you're doing, right? To perceive some type of power that can be achieved through the magical technology and to let yourself be led into it. And the church has always stood against that.
Yes.
That is being led by your lower passions and desires to power over your fellow man. And in a time that socially we seem to have no ability to think socially about the implications of what will widespread social adoption of AI corporately, individually, the replacing of real relationships and conversation, the massive economic ramifications of layoffs and economic turmoil, just all of those ramifications, we seem to be unable to even really think about it because we perceive it again as a kind of this is the ideological trick, the technocracy trick, as an inevitability, and that human freedom has nothing there.
Yeah,
we have no ability to change anything.
It's fate. I mean, it's a return of the conception of the gods in that sense, right? Of like, we create them, but we don't control them, right? I don't think that that's. I mean, I think that the churches. This is what I mean with it, like going back to the beginning, like the church's deep history of the criticism of the man-made power. When it's mistaken for anything other than that, or when it's treated as if it's something other than that. This is old, like from the patristic period, and it needs to be brought back, reapplied. There's an immense amount of work that has to be done there, but we have to see the crisis that we're on the verge of, that we're in. I think, on the technological side, it's just I think it's dire. But I think that the like you said, the ideological problem, the lingering ideology, like rhetoric of ideology, is one of the problems, right? Because you have, I mean, maybe I can give an example, like an everyday example that some people will resonate with. So I sometimes listen to conservative talk radio when I'm driving, and I like to catch up on what's going on. And what people are saying, and you can feel in these guys who often have good intuitions, the poverty of their language and the concepts. Mm-hmm. Like they can feel, say, that big pharma and big tech is bad, but then they can't get out of like the capitalist ideologies. And so they have to talk about capitalism and private property. And it's like, well, but don't you see the tension there? Like you can't do both, right? And it's the same sort of thing on, so one guy who does that just routinely is someone like Glenn Beck. And then on the other side, you have like guys like, on a different conservative commentator, be someone like Jesse Kelly or these guys who again have a lot of very, very accurate intuitions, but then who's the bad guy? And the bad guy are communists. And it's like, communists? Yeah. Like, I don't think I've ever met a communist.
No, I haven't either. Like a real one?
Like a real one? Yeah. It's like communists. And it's like, I think what you mean is tyrants.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think what that is actually meant there is actually oligarchic tyranny. Right. And I think that's but you don't have the language to identify it. And so who are the bad guys? The bad guys are communists.
Right.
Right. But how do you beat communism? You beat communism with capitalism. It's like, wait, the bad guys are all the people who run all the capital and the money.
Yeah. Surprise, your oligarchy tyranny is capitalism.
Yeah, your oligarch. It's like, and so you're just spinning.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's where Christianity can a really thorough understanding of Catholic social teaching can come in and show how the communists and the oligarchs are different versions of something that we identify as tyranny, as injustice, and then what are the premises on which that justice can be identified, injustice can be identified, right? But breaking free of the ideological constructs, like the ideological rhetoric, the ideological language of the 19th and 20th century no longer describes what we're witnessing.
And I think it requires of Catholics to be kind of unabashed, like to be bold in doing it. Like you don't have to, we're in a time in which you don't have to couch everything in certain, well, I have to nod to this and then let experts do that or whatever. Like no one's doing that. And what that requires is to not be ashamed of the fact that you have social doctrine. Like it's incumbent on the lay people today, especially like our witness as lay people in the world is to make this real, to make the justice, the charity of, being members of the church present in our world. It reminds me what Pope Francis would say often to the youth of get off of your couch of comfort and luxury. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, you have a role to play in that, and you can't hide it back. You have to go to the roots, bring it out.
Yeah, and it's especially the job of the laity to do that. Politics is our realm.
Right.
I mean, we're in charge of it. It's ours. We build it and operate it according to our prudence, right? And our judgment. It's where we have authority in the church, and we need to work on it.
Yes. Right. And this isn't just a call for you, the listener, to do it, but we have a few announcements about what we're going to be doing with it. So it's, I guess you began writing in 2022, this manuscript on Catholic social teaching.
Yeah,
but we have an announcement to make about that. So we've been collaborating with Word on Fire Academic Press, and we're in the works to be publishing a book on Catholic social teaching, interpreting the doctrines, so power, common good, authority, the thesis of the book.
Justice, liberty,
nationalism, technology,
property,
as well.
Yeah,
like
technology.
A very expansive book going through all those topics, giving the laity the resources to do that.
And all with a sort of a cosmological, theological perspective. So not like a list of policy positions,
right?
But like why?
Yeah.
Like here's how they all fit together. Mm-hmm. All of these various things: subsidiarity, freedom, justice. Why are those vocation? How are these different ways of talking about one thing?
Yes. We're really excited to be working with Word on Fire Press on this to get this book out to as many people as we can, to hopefully affect the laity in a good way to use their power well. That book, we're going to be working on it for the rest of this year, probably into next year. And we won't see it in print probably till the end of next year or even into 2027.
Oh, I hope earlier.
I hope earlier. Okay. But yeah, we'll see where we go. But yeah, we're beginning this. This is kind of a, like our last podcast on Leo. We keep saying it's felt like for the last 5 years of New Polity, if I could give a somewhat of an interpretation, trying to figure out the implications of those doctrines, trying to work out the philosophy, the political philosophy of of a Catholic political order, and in the times that we are, understanding liberalism, critiquing liberalism, showing what real authority is and power. Your book, Church Against the State, 5 years of thinking through these ideas, really building out a very well thought out, coherent political theory that is fully Catholic, that is based in subsidiarity, against liberal sovereignty. D.C. Schindler's work, Politics of the Real, and we believe that it's time for us to now make it a statement, now make it Catholic social teaching directly, something the laity can understand, bring into their lives.
Yeah. Exactly. I think we're ready with the work Mark has done on gender, the work that we've done on politics, where, like you said, we were criticizing liberalism, but then very quickly, in the same 5 years, criticizing the critics of liberalism. Well, what about integralism? What about the Nietzscheans? What about, and so also saying that doesn't feel right. Why? And then exploring that, and then all that. I think, like you're saying, we've gotten to ourselves. We found ourselves in a place where I think we can articulate it. I think we can articulate it in a positive sense, like from the beginning, start at the beginning and move through and articulate a positive vision that is not complete, of course, because it's Christianity's in its very nature incomplete, but coherent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that takes time, and it takes money as well. So, we are a nonprofit. We're not turning much profit on most things. We burn through money so that we can continue to do this great work, and we need support. Yeah. So you can go to newpolity.com/donate if you want to support this work. I mean, this is going to be, basically a year of both of our time. Mm-hmm. We're going to continue to put out podcasts. We're planning to do a podcast series on Catholic social teaching to kind of go along with as we write. We're going to be co-authoring this together. To get that out there, but we really do need your support and very much appreciate it. Thank you to all of our supporters. If you're someone with very deep pockets and would like to talk to us, you can go to newpolity.com/donate and pick a time to talk with us. We'd love to talk to you about more about the project. We also have one other announcement. So we are launching a Catholic social teaching masterclass next year in the summer. So in our tentative date now is June 21st to 25th, a Monday through just a week-long course. So this masterclass is tailored for professionals, so lawyers and people working in finance, DREs, teachers, so directors of religious education, priests. It is,
and then really anyone else who really feels motivated.
But those absolutely.
Are the people we're hoping to help the most directly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to be next year. It's going to be a full week-long intensive course, multiple lectures a day by all of us here.
Yep, another faculty from the College of St. Joseph the Worker, and that's another aspect of it that's great about the masterclass is that there will be an option within it to earn college credit through the college. Through the College of St. Joseph the Worker. So you if that's something that you need for continuing education credits for your job, or if you're in college and want to earn credits, it'll be a 3-credit college course. Mm-hmm. And now you can also audit it and not have to do what you need to do to earn the credits. But if you need the credits, they'll be available.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can learn more about that, newpolity.com/masterclass. And when this video is up, registration will be up.
Yeah.
So it and really we're hoping to make this a kind of ongoing thing for New Polity, that we're teaching, we're interpreting, giving you the doctrines that are there in Catholic social teaching, and making it something that can be, I know a lot of times New Polity, it can seem very very heady, very like philosophical, out there. And for a lot of people, it can kind of, how do I bring this in? This will be we get the eternal question of, what do I do with
What
this?
am I supposed to do? I was like, I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. But yeah, and I legitimately think that for a number of reasons, it's very encouraging reading the calls, because I've just finished a big read of the encyclicals. But even going back to Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum, that he had hoped and he called for institutes and universities and lay people to make studies of Rerum Novarum, to go to the doctrines, to figure out how they're going to be implemented in their time. That call gets reiterated. Pius XI and Quadragesimo Anno does it, and
John
so
Paul
on.
II.
John Paul II, Centesimus Annus, Benedict XVI did in Caritas and Veritate. That the understanding that it's not just the popes, sitting in the Vatican. Hopefully someone will read this, but actually, hopefully the laity will take this, like make it their own, will fully embrace it, will understand it, will teach it, and we're hoping to contribute to that.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be great.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right.